Hey MIDI enthusiasts, how you doing? I hope you're all having a great day, and this video will be going out on Dab Day, the day after Boxing Day. So I think we can just about justify the Christmassy intro one last time. In my books, Dab Day is an official Christmas day. Day after Boxing Day, I'm not sure whether it is, but for me it is anyway. So I'm recording this narration on Christmas Eve evening, so it's 25 past 10 for me, and just got all the Christmas prep done, and just waiting for the big ho 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 really. So I hope you got everything you wanted for Christmas. I hope I did as well. Find out soon. And in this video we're back on it, back on the ERA build or restoration. In the last video I left you with William Murfitt coming down, giving us a hand, and we were cutting out this near side sill floor assembly, and we're doing that. It's being replaced with the end machine panel, which comes complete, so it's inner sill, outer sill, and about a third of the floor, the full length of the car. So once you get used to fitting them, it does save a lot of time. There is a bit of technique to fitting it, but I think I might have said last time we fitted, this will be the 5th side, so 6 by the time we've done the ERA. We're getting pretty good at it now. So when it come to welding this panel in, once everything was cut out, it literally took, it was about 4 hours tops to do the whole lot, which is pretty impressive. Mark's just cutting out the end of the crossmember there. You don't have to do that, it is corroded on the ERA, it's not great on the end. So on this side, the near side, it needed replacing, but on the other side it's actually okay. But it's one of those panels that looks like it had been repaired in the past, and it's obviously had inner and outer seals in the past, so it was probably the original crossmember, complete crossmember, but yeah, it's been repaired a couple of times in the past, so again, just showing signs of age really. And then the next panel to go is that inner doorstep, and rather than just a repair section, it's having sort of, I guess it's most of that doorstep up the A-pillar as well, so it's just the spot welds to unpick on that side, which Mark is doing a great job of. So we get a few comments about the speed of the build and how quickly it's going, and yeah, it is going very quickly. Myself and Mark have a very, I guess, similar work ethic. When we're down there working on the ERA, whether it's the ERA, kit, bolt in the past, we just get on with it. It's non-stop. Work pretty well as a team actually. We don't stand around doing a lot of waffling. We just do what needs to be done. So this build is going pretty quickly compared to other people's, and thank you for all the kind comments about the speed of it. Yeah, like I say, we just work well as a team together, and we just want to get on with it. Everything's a race with Mark though, so if I'm doing an A panel on one side and he's doing the other, it will be a race to see who can fit it the first. So believe it or not, this footage here was taken a week before Christmas. So we're at Christmas now, So this is day after Boxing Day, and Mark thinks by Saturday stroke Sunday this week all the welding and all the bodywork will be done on the car, or all the welding and all the panel work, which is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Taking in mind myself and Mark are only working on it really at weekends. I'm helping out one day, he's maybe doing a day and a half, little bits during the week after work, but yeah, it's quite amazing to think how fast this is progressing. Now obviously there is still a very long way to go, but just to get to the stage, if over Christmas, before the new year, all the welding and all the panel work is done, that is pretty phenomenal. But like I say, it's practice. We've done this a few times before now. All minis seem to be the same. Need, you know, rust in very similar areas. You buy things like the M Machine pre-assembled panels and it just speeds things up. And some of the things like the bulkhead, you know, may seem a bit extreme. It is quite brave replacing a panel like that, but you just get stuck in, get it done, and it actually makes the build easier further on, rather than chasing bits of rust here and bits of rust there. The bigger panels you can replace, the quicker you get it done. So as you can see, that's getting all prepped now. It's just a case of making a big enough hole for the new repair section to go in. I think the most difficult bit to do on this now is the rear hill board, the subframe mounting bracket needs welding once it's all back together. Now in previous builds we've replaced the rear quarter panel repair sections in front of the wheel arch. We're not doing that on the ERA, so that means we need to weld it through the door bin, which there is very limited space there. So I did discuss with Mark maybe using a hole cutter and cutting a hole inside the door bin, which is underneath the seat base, so you probably wouldn't see it. But Mark pre-drilled the holes and we did actually manage to get the welding torch down in there. It's kind of a case of lining it up, making sure the settings are right, pulling the trigger and welding by sound. So you're listening for a good weld because you really can't see much. Obviously when you get the torch away you can put a mirror down there and have a look as well, which is what we've done in this scenario. So the actual join along the floor, the full length of the floor again, done it a few times before now. It will be continuous seam weld the whole way along. So I know some people worry about the heat distorting the panel, and yeah, that is a factor. But if you weld it carefully, if you do 2 inches at a time and alternate it front to rear, you can do it without distorting the panel too much. and really it's probably the best way to do it. It's the strongest way to do it anyway. What puts a lot of people off is it's not easy to do. So you need to get a really good panel gap between the two panels you're welding, because it's a butt weld, and it can be quite difficult to do a butt weld getting enough penetration without blowing holes in the panels. So it can help if there's two of you just to use a little bit of lead pipe flattened down on the back of where you're welding, because not lead pipe, sorry, copper pipe, because the melting point of copper is much higher than it is of mild steel. That's obviously why it's copper tips on the electrodes of a spot welder, and the tip on a MIG welder as well. But that allows you to put that metal on the back of the panel you're welding. It helps with the heat dissipation, but it also helps prevent you blowing holes in the panel. And if you need to weld a hole in the panel as well, so if there's actually a hole there, you can use the copper pipe to back the weld onto. It works really, really well, but you generally need two of you when you're doing this, because you need one inside the car and one outside the car doing the welding. But it is a good little technique. So, bit of sense checking there, just refitting the door before we go much further, because obviously it's had that new doorstep in that side, it's had a new A panel, and it's having a new floor. Really, really important to make sure the door still fits in. And it does, it's only a few extra minutes just to put the hinges in the door and offer it up. So lots of plug welds to do here. Seam weld along the top, and then plug welds all the way down at that A panel or the A post, just because you can't get a spot welder in there. And you can see that in machine repair sill stroke floor on the left hand side there. Just waiting for the weld free primer to dry at the moment. Over the years I've done quite a bit of welding. I only really do welding just for myself, just for DIY, just as a hobby. But you know, having owned minis and been restoring minis, working on minis for a long time, welding's one thing you tend to get pretty good at. What I struggle with though is I have a Clark 135 TE hobby welder, and Mark's got this, it's called a Smart MIG. I can't tell you what model it is off the top of my head, but it's a much more expensive welder. It's much better quality. It's got a Euro cable on it, or Euro torch, has more settings on it, and it welds completely different to the Clark. So after being down and welding with Mark's welder for a while, I'll come back and use my own, and it's like relearning welding again for the first few welds. All of a sudden I'm pretty naff at welding. and then I'll do the same. I'll get really used to my welder, and then I go down to marks and have to relearn marks. It sounds odd, but you just get used to the way the welder forms a puddle. I can't tell you the technicalities of it, but some welders, just in the way they pulse the electric or the current or whatever, they do just weld differently, and you get used to your own welder. Certainly my welder, the 135 TE, is very, very good if you want to do some really thin panel welding, or if you're welding a less than ideal piece of metal. So in other words, a piece of metal that's a little bit rusty. It's far more forgiving, it's far more gentle, and you can get away with it. Marks welder, absolutely no chance. It will just blow holes if the metal is not absolutely perfect. But when it does weld and you're welding decent metal, it's a far more consistent weld. It's also much faster. So as you can see, that floor's almost in now. The floor seam is just stitch welded at the moment. As you can see, every 3 inches, I guess, there's an inch of weld, and it's just a case of alternating them front to rear, and you just go along the whole panel, and you can do it without causing too much distortion at all. So as you can see there, a bit at the back, and then move forward a bit and just keep alternating it, and it works really, really well. It does really help if you get the cut perfect. What you want, the gap is, well, the gap you pretty much want it touch. No, you want about 1 millimetre maximum. About 0.5 millimetre is ideal. If you get it touching, you do actually get a bit of distortion there, because what happens is it causes the metal to expand, so you get a bit of swelling in the panel. So you do actually want a bit of gap there, but any more than 1 mil, it makes it really difficult to weld, because you're just trying to bridge across a gap. So I hope you're enjoying these videos. This part of the build can get a little bit boring to begin with. It all looks really interesting when you're ripping big panels off, when you're welding big panels back in, but it ends up being a lot of just tedious stuff, prep work, and it's going to get more interesting once we start bolting bigger bits back onto the car, and that is coming soon. So we're certainly working at pace. And just to finish off this video, it's just showing the inside there. I hope you've enjoyed this update. There will be another one coming soon, and I hope you all had a really great Christmas. See you again soon.